Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the June founder webinar. I'm joined by Reclaim co-founders Henry and Patrick, who are going to be taking lead on today's demo, walking through some of the newest releases at Reclaim, some improvements, and just showcasing what we've been working on. So I'm going to hand it over to Henry.
Yeah, as Elizabeth mentioned, I'm Henry. I'm one of the co-founders, and super excited to share with you some of the new stuff we've come out with lately. I think what we'll probably do is walk through kind of what's new for folks who are familiar with Reclaim, and then we can kind of take questions and dive into other parts of the product. I think the way we'll probably divvy it up, Patrick, if you're down for this, is I'll show off round robin and some of the new smart meetings capabilities, and then if you wanted to take a crack at showing off some of the target calendar changes as well as auto reschedule for tasks, which is a big improvement that I know a lot of folks, probably a bunch of folks on this call, have been waiting for a long time. But I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So probably the first thing, and this was, I think, our highest requested feature for scheduling links, maybe ever, is our round robin links. And so if you're not familiar with this concept of round robin links or round robin scheduling, this is, for a long time, we've had these things called team links. Team links will look at availability across everybody, and it'll book time with multiple people, which is useful if you want to get a meeting book that considers, say, Henry and Elizabeth and Patrick's availability. But sometimes you might want to have a meeting that takes kind of any of someone. So, for example, like an interview panel or a sales call or a support call where you have multiple people on a team, and you want to surface up maximum availability to the attendee by kind of giving any of some group's availability, but you only ever want to book with one person. And so this is a great way to kind of load balance meetings across your team, but also to kind of unlock those use cases where you might have a group that any one of those people could sort of take the call. So I'll show you kind of how to set those things up. It's pretty much the same thing as creating a normal scheduling link. That's the same thing with team links. I'll actually start fresh here so you can kind of see the experience. So let's start with, maybe I'll make something here called engineering screen. So this is a link that I'm going to send out to potential candidates for an interview, where I'd like, one of my engineers to be on the call, but I might also want to have the engineering manager and maybe the recruiter on the call by default. And so I'll enter a little description here. This is a 3-hour, no, the 3-hour interview is crazy. A 1-hour interview for a coding session. You'll notice that this used to say organizer, and one of the big kind of core changes has been a few nice little foundational changes that came with round robin. But you'll now notice there's this little host call out. This is because we've now sort of made some changes to how meetings are hosted as part of round robin. I'll come back to that in a second, but this is kind of how the event title will be named. You can use these nice little template variables in order to kind of get control over how the events will be titled. And then really the meat of it is in this attendees section here. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add actually a few engineers from our team. I'm going to add Andrew and Chris and Clayton and Daniel. We've got a big old panel here. Maybe I'll add Greg for good measure. And I can actually go in now and add them to the round robin pool. I can do this by clicking this arrow, or I can do it by dragging kind of people between these two sections. And you'll notice I'm here and I'm still listed as the host. And what this means is that when I send this link out, when people kind of look at the availability, they're going to see my availability plus the union of basically all of these people's availability. So it kind of gives them a ton of different options. In this case, everyone's in the same time zone, but at least Andrew's in Mountain Time Zone, so we'll get some nice little overlap there. And when people end up booking, the meeting will essentially be with myself and one of these people at a time. But what if I didn't want to be involved in the meeting? Or maybe I want to be on the meeting, but I don't want my availability to be considered. I'm okay if I can't make it, but I'd like to kind of know that the meeting happened. You now have the ability to set even a single organizer to optional. And you can see here now all of these people are the host because we're assuming that I'll be added to the meeting, but my availability is not going to be considered. And when one of these people gets booked, it's going to use their Zoom link. So you'll see here, we warn you like, hey, Andrew doesn't have Zoom set up, but these other people do. So if a meeting gets booked with them, it's not going to allow for Zoom to be picked as a location. Of course, Google Meet you get for free. And so if that's set as default, that should work just fine. Um, and then going even further, what if I wanted to just have a round robin meeting? I don't want to be on the meeting at all. You now have the ability to completely remove yourself and really any organizer from a scheduling link. And this is really cool because not only can you set up round robin links for other people, you can also basically create these like pure round robin meetings where multiple people can be scheduled without you having to be involved in the meeting in any way. You can also add multiple organizers. This is something that's pretty unique in the market. There aren't a lot of products out there that let you, or really, I don't know if there's any other product that lets you set multiple organizers on a round robin link. So for example, like let's say I want to have myself and AJ. AJ is our head of engineering. I'm okay being optional. I kind of want AJ to be required because he'd like to be there to kind of kick off the call and introduce a member of the team. You can have these people. And so you can kind of think of these as like folks that will always be added to the meeting versus like people that will be picked from a pool. Most everything else works exactly the same way you'd expect. Priority, just like on team links, is set at the link level. So if I send out like a critical link, it's going to look across lower priority items on everyone's calendar and show those times in addition to free times as available slots for booking. And then everything else you can kind of, take normally from scheduling links, things like custom questions and, link options and things like that. So I'll go ahead and create this and we'll see what we get. So I've got this engineering screen. You can see it's warning me here about Zoom. Maybe I'll remove Zoom just to make this nice and clean. Now we've got Google Meet. And I'm going to open this guy up. And there's a couple little changes here that are kind of nice to point out. The first is you'll notice we've added the group names here as well. And the reason we did this is kind of a bad example because it's using Kevin's booking page, but you could have things like, your customer success team or your engineering team as a group. In fact, maybe I'll do that so you can kind of see it here. But basically the idea is that you can kind of name your groups in a way that sort of represents like the team or the kind of group of people that you're trying to book with. And then when people go to book, they'll actually see that. And so this is a really nice way, especially with round robin, where you don't necessarily want to show like every possible person that you might meet with. You want to show just like maybe just the main host and the team name. You'll see that here. And you can see, I've got this set of times available. This is cutting across AJ's availability. AJ is a busy guy, as well as, again, the union of anyone who's on the link. So I'm going to go ahead here and pick this time. This is probably going to freak someone out because we're going to create an engineering screen with a member of our team. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe just make it with, I'll do it with Kevin. Why not? And I can CC others same way I can with other scheduling links. And you'll see here now I've been scheduled with me and Clayton because I've got that person added to that link. And you can see here we are now booked, with everyone that should be there. And you can see I was optional, so I'm set as optional here, and I'm actually out of the office on Friday, so I declined it. So that's pretty much, round robin in a nutshell. This all works pretty neatly with like Personalize and all the other workflows that you already have in Reclaim, but we're pretty excited to bring it to you. A couple things to note about round robin in terms of how the scheduling works. Currently, the way that we are kind of looking at availability for round robin is we are not like perfectly load balancing every person. In other words, this is not a strict order. This is a like combined availability or union of availability across multiple people. We do have some logic around who we prefer. So for example, if there's a time where Clayton, Daniel, and Greg are all available, but Greg and Daniel have more meetings booked on the link than Clayton does, we're going to prefer scheduling you with Clayton. Similarly, if you reschedule and we see a time where multiple people are available, including the person you originally booked with, we're going to prefer rescheduling you with the same person. So we try to have a little bit of smarts around kind of like how we load balance time in cases where there's conflicts, or sort of not conflicts, but overlapping times that are available across people. But we're not yet at the stage where we're doing like strict ordered round robin. That's probably one of the next things that we're going to build out for this feature. So that's round robin, and hopefully you can think of a whole bunch of different ways that you're going to use this in your own life. The second thing that I'll show you is kind of a small improvement. I'll see if I actually have any there. I do. I don't know, Patrick, if you just sent this to me, but I thank you for doing that if you did. So we for a long time now have had this detected tab for smart meetings, where you can see meetings that you own, like this weekly chat or team sync, and go and convert them to smart meetings. But for a long time, we've had requests for the ability to take meetings that you're not the organizer of. So like your boss invites you to a one-on-one, or there's a team meeting that you're not the owner of, and you might want to still prompt those people to convert it to a smart meeting. So we now give you the ability to send invites here. So I can go ahead and like send an invite on this, or I can literally just copy this link and send it to someone, and it's going to take them through a very lightweight onboarding that will help them to not only like sign up for Reclaim, but also like convert their smart meeting convert their meeting to a smart meeting so that it gets scheduled via Reclaim. So that's a little improvement, but a really nice way to kind of unlock more of the meetings that are on your calendar that you may not be able to convert today. So those are the two things I wanted to go over that are new. Patrick, if you're in a place to do the old swaparoo, I can hand it over to you for target calendars and auto reschedule.
I am in a place, and but you will have to manage the questions, and maybe actually now's a good time before I'll take over the
Yeah.
screen sharing, but you can read the questions. I'll read them to you, and then I'll start sharing. So Dorothy wrote in and asked a couple questions a few minutes ago. If there's a minimum number of attendees, and for example, saying, we need to require 3 of the 5 people was, I think, the follow-up question there. And feel free to address that and share kind of your thoughts about what we do today and where we might be going in the future. And then I'll get ready on my end.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 ways to answer this. There's 2 ways to interpret this question, and maybe the first, I think, is maybe not what you're asking, but I'll answer it anyways. There's no minimum number of people that you can add to a round robin meeting. So you could even have a round robin meeting. It's kind of silly, but you could have a round robin with one person in the round robin pool if you'd like. That's a meeting that will only ever schedule with that one person, but you could do it. So we don't enforce a minimum. I think what you might be getting at, though, and you can write in more if you'd like to clarify, is more like a threshold, like a certain number of people that need to be booked in order for a meeting to happen. That's a kind of slightly different workflow that we're definitely thinking about. Sometimes people view this more as like appointment slots, or like kind of like almost like webinar type registrations, where it's like, hey, we need to see at least 2 or 3 people book this slot before we're going to take the meeting, and that we have not yet built. That's a thing that we're planning on doing in the future.
And it does sound like threshold was the key word here.
Yep.
I will also add a similar request, Dorothy, has come up for our smart meetings capability as well. And the idea being, we've got both with scheduling links and smart meetings, the recurring component here, where smart meetings are recurring if you're not familiar with them, where you can define optional people. And in those cases, they basically just get copied on the invite, but their availability is not checked or required or verified. In both cases, for one-off scheduling links and smart meetings, we've heard from our customers that they would like to be able to express more nuance around meeting a certain threshold or quorum of attendees. With recurring meetings, we think it's typically around 50%, requires at least 50% of the required attendees. That is, if you had a 2-person, it's a one-on-one meeting, obviously it should be canceled if neither one of you can make it. But if it's a 10-person meeting, you might still want to have the meeting if at least 6 can make it. So these are definitely some ideas we're still exploring, and as Henry mentioned, planning to roll out for both parts of the platform. We got another question. Actually, we might as well just, while we're on round robin questions that just came in. Henry, I'll kick it to you. I'll read it and you can answer. Can the round robin method be used with external clients or with scheduling calendars? So let you kind of give your best interpretation, and we may ask for some clarifications too.
Yeah, I think the way I'm interpreting this question is, can you add people into the round robin pool who are not inside of your Reclaim team? But you can tell me if I'm wrong or correct on that. And the answer is no, not currently. Right now, we make the assumption that anyone who gets added to a team link or a round robin link, or really any scheduling link, is a member of your Reclaim team. This is a topic that, as we get into one-off scheduling and appointment scheduling and other kinds of scheduling workflows that we're going to be looking at as part of the Smart Meetings launch, we're kind of introducing some new concepts around what we call attendee users. So people who maybe don't have a Reclaim account or don't have a paid Reclaim account, who can still be added to a meeting. Like with Smart Meetings, you can add anyone to a meeting as long as you can see their calendar. And so currently we have this restriction around scheduling links, but this is definitely something we'd like to open up in the future. And with that, I mean, perhaps you could add, I mean, since all those things could resolve down to an email, we could make it a like scheduling calendar that you're adding into it effectively. That's definitely, I could see a number of scenarios where that'd be relevant. But right now it's all internal to your Reclaim team.
And I should add, this is a little bit different with Smart Meetings. Again, they're recurring, so they probably won't fit for this use case. But we, just to kind of underscore our intent to explore all these different use cases and address all of them over time, with Smart Meetings today, they can be used for people outside of your Reclaim team and even your organization. So for example, if you haven't considered this, I use Smart Meetings to schedule a quarterly lunch with some of my friends. And they don't work at Reclaim with me, but because they are Reclaim users or they have shared their FreeBusy availability to me, Reclaim can coordinate and schedule and find the best recurring time for our quarterly lunch. So it can work that way. And we do have customers who use it for example, a quarterly check-in with their customers. So they might have, 5 key accounts that they manage, and they've set up Smart Meetings to meet with a representative of each of those 5 key accounts. So we do support some of those external workflows in other parts of the product, but we've got a little more work to do to fully hit that with scheduling links. Okay, well, let's dive into some task improvements that came out in the last few weeks. I'm going to start with one of the most popular ones that folks have been asking for. Actually, they're both really popular. They were kind of probably our top 2 open feature requests. But I'll start with target calendar support. And to kind of set the stage, I want to remind everybody, if you've been with Reclaim for a while, you might recall that for the last few years, Reclaim really only scheduled on what we called your main account. And so you can change this to another account. For example, you might change it from your work account to your personal account or vice versa, but Reclaim would only schedule on the main account. And then it would look for availability on what we call the connected calendars. But starting with the Habits and Smart Meetings launch a few months ago, we started to open it up to allow you to schedule to different calendars. So for example, with Habits, if you're on the new Habits 2.0 platform, you can go ahead and create, I'll pick a template here, and I'll pick a personal template, and I'll say that I want to clean my car. I got to do the deep cleaning of the vehicle. I've got 3 kids. They leave lots of Cheerios in the car and all sorts of messes. So once a quarter is probably a good idea. And one of the key things you can see here is you can now pick and schedule it on a different calendar. So here I can say, I want this habit scheduled on my personal calendar. And so you can kind of really see this drive home. Here's what my personal calendar looks like. Right now, it just has this date night on here. I also do a calendar sync to my work calendar, and that's why we see this personal commitment. And if I hide my personal calendar, that's all I see. So this is, I'm not going to walk through this feature right here. We actually demoed it in our last founder series, but I wanted to show this to kind of set the stage for what we're doing now with tasks. So habits and smart meetings can both schedule to other calendars. One other nice little improvement before I get to the tasks is also the way we treat blended events. So you'll notice that even though my calendar, when I look at it in Google Calendar, shows two things here, because the calendar sync feature makes a copy of this date night and calls it personal commitment, we don't show two things here. We just show the one thing. And that's because our planner blends those two things together. It's mostly always done this, but we made some nice improvements in the last few weeks. One of those nice improvements is if you hide one of those calendars, we show you now what it looks like without that source details layered in there. So it gives you a good sense of what your coworkers might see. But then when you show all of your calendars, we just show you what you need to see. So it helps you be confident with the privacy of your calendar syncs, but also avoiding the clutter that comes from duplication that calendar syncs create. Okay, now let's get to the actual tasks. So the thing you may have already noticed is that when you're creating a new task, and you can do this through integrations as well, I'm going to show you this on Todoist, you will see we now have this new little message that says tasks will schedule here. And if you click this little info, it tells you to go to hours to change this setting. So I'm going to pop on over there, and I'm going to, I think we have a little bug that we need to fix. That link didn't take me there. I'm going to click over to settings, hours, and open up my working hours. And you'll see this new option, calendar to schedule tasks on. So this is specifically for tasks. And working hours and personal hours are two default hour sets, and you can configure this for both. So I'm going to change my personal hours to schedule to my personal calendar. You can do this though also for custom hours. So if there's other kinds of personal, maybe there's weekend hours that you want to also schedule to your personal calendar, you could create that. Or you might have a dedicated calendar just for work tasks that you want your deep focus work to go to. Those are all configurable as well. But I've got my personal hours now scheduling to my personal calendar. And there's some nice benefits of this. So one of the nice things is that it starts to create some separation in my life between work and personal privacy issues. So historically, there was this tension around wanting Reclaim to be focused. Usually the primary calendar would be and the main account would be your work account. But then you may have also wanted to use Reclaim to manage personal things, but not necessarily want those personal things on your work calendar. And so with this feature, you can now fully break them apart. And I'm going to show you how that works. So for example, I'm going to say that I want to mow the lawn. And I need half an hour, I'll say an hour. And I'm going to go ahead and set that for my personal hours. And I'm going to say it's due this Sunday, and I don't want to do it until Saturday morning. So I'll go ahead and schedule that. And what we're going to see is that is going to get scheduled not on my primary calendar anymore, but instead on my personal calendar. And so here it is, scheduled Saturday, 10 a.m. I'm wide open on the weekend. But the cool thing is that it is on that personal calendar. So I can hide the personal calendar or hide whatever calendar it is so that I don't see that information. That's also a nice tip for you. If you've been using Reclaim and you like Reclaim, but sometimes you feel like all the habits and the tasks have cluttered things up a little too much and it's hard to see where your actual meetings are, you can also schedule your habits and tasks now to other calendars so that you can hide and show them as you want, as you see fit. Now, what's beautiful here is that Reclaim automatically also runs this through the calendar sync feature, and so you'll notice that the date night, if there's something on my personal calendar, is getting copied over here, but it did not copy over here on my work calendar, and I believe we're going to double check that. I think I set this up right. says, oh, it does say sync at all hours. Okay, well then I think we're going to see this copy here. Oh, that's right. Apologies. It is not copied right now because it is free, meaning Reclaim has already detected, this is that standard free busy stuff. Apologies. I rehearsed this earlier. I forgot about this part of the demo. The free busy status of your tasks, if you may recall, you may already know this, works based on looking at the due date. And what Reclaim's doing is it's always checking to see if you could take another meeting or push that task backwards, and would it still be able to get done by its due date? Well, it can, because I said it was due Sunday afternoon and it's Saturday morning, and you can see I've got a wide open calendar. But let's go ahead now and change it so that the due date on that task is not Sunday afternoon, but instead is Saturday morning. I want to get it done by 10 a.m. Well, I'll say 11 a.m. So basically, I don't want to schedule until 10 a.m. and ideally, I'd like to be done before lunch on Saturday. So it's going to rerun the scheduler now. And what's going to happen is we're going to see this thing turn from free to busy, because it is now at risk of missing its due date. If I push it back any further, it's going to be overdue. And now it's flipped it to busy. And momentarily, if all goes well, we should see that our calendar sync system kicks into gear and will now create an additional copy on my work calendar, indicating that I'm busy for that task. And the key thing here is nobody on my work side of things can see that I'm mowing the lawn on Saturday at 10 a.m. They simply know that I have a personal commitment. So these two features can work together to allow you to still do time blocking on things that you want to keep private or separated from your main calendar. But as they turn busy, block out on other calendars you care about, like your work calendar. This works, of course, this demo is on a weekend, but it can work for things that are in the middle of the day and so on. So that is a brief demo of Target Calendar support. At its core level, I want to show you now how it also works for our integrations. So if, for example, you use Todoist or ClickUp, we have some really great capabilities that we launched, I believe it was mid last year, that allow you to establish sophisticated rules and conditions for how these things synchronize to different scheduling hours. And so remember, the target task calendar is determined by the scheduling hours. So in this case, I've got a Todoist rule that says anything that is tagged Reclaim Personal, I want to sync it to my personal hours. And so that should, if all goes well, automatically schedule it on my personal calendar as well. So let's go ahead and try that out. So I'm going to say, take out the trash. And I'm going to say that that is a personal task, and it is due also on Sunday. Where is Sunday in this thing? Here we go, Sunday the 16th. So I'll go ahead and add that task, and we will see it in upcoming. If I can find it right here in Todoist, there it is. Take out the trash. We can see Reclaim already scheduled time for it, so I can come back over here. I see that my take out the trash was synchronized, and I can see it. I should see it somewhere on our on the calendar in a moment when it schedules. So let's come back and look at this. There it is. Take out the trash. It's going to happen tonight. That's because I didn't set a don't schedule before, so it's happening later tonight, right on my personal calendar, and we can see it right here as well. And again, there is not a copy on my work calendar because it is not busy. I don't need to do it till Sunday, and so it's not busy. So if anyone were trying to meet with me late in the evening on my work calendar, they wouldn't see that. They could just book a meeting right over it, and Reclaim would push it backwards, even though it's on a different calendar. So that is Target Calendar support. We hope you enjoy it. One thing to note is if you're changing your calendar, oh, actually, a couple quick things to note just to get it working. You do need to configure that calendar as a connected calendar. I had already done that here by checking personal. So if you're setting this up for the first time, you make a calendar, come in here, set it as a connected calendar, then you can configure it under your hours settings. And the other thing to know is we don't move any existing events from the calendar it was previously scheduled on. We only do this going forward. So if you are looking or expecting that, it won't happen. That's why they won't move. But it will for any new tasks or new events that we have to schedule in service to existing tasks. Those will get put on the new target calendar. If you're using a lot of our integrations and everything's kept in something like Todoist, some users have disconnected Todoist and then reconnected it, which recreates all those tasks, and then they all schedule on the right spot. Okay, so that is our target calendar support. We did get one.
Oh,
go
you
ahead.
already saw it. Okay. No, I was just gonna read the question, but you got it.
All right. Yeah, I did see a question came in while I was speaking around dependent tasks. The answer is yes. We do have plans to support task dependencies. That's probably next on some of the most requested features around tasks. Target calendars and the starting capability I'm about to walk you through are probably 1 and 2. But task dependencies are a very popular feature. I will note that we've already begun some work on the concept of dependencies here with habits and smart meetings. We introduced the ability to do dependencies either before or after or on a different day. We are planning to get there with tasks as well. And I will note there's actually 2 kinds of dependencies that we are exploring. One are dependencies that are for 2 different tasks that you're responsible for. So you can't start on task B until task A is fully done. And so they have to be sequenced a certain way and as they're scheduled on your calendar. But there's another kind of dependency, which is, especially if you're integrating with Jira or ClickUp or Asana or Linear, where you're working with a team and there's complex dependencies and blocking issues that other teammates are responsible for. And we do know that some customers have asked us for, and we totally understand it, the ability to not schedule that task that's coming in from that external system until all of its blockers or dependencies have been resolved. And so both of those versions of dependencies are things that we're thinking about and plan to add over time. So stay tuned on that. Okay, let's talk about auto starting. So all of you who've been using Reclaim probably know that the way Reclaim works, and we can see an example of this that has happened here in real time, is that Reclaim kind of assumes that anything that's on the calendar happened. It doesn't necessarily assume that your tasks are actually done. I'll walk you through the different options here in a second, but it did always assume that your habits were done. And that's why you see this little green check mark here, because this habit just finished a few minutes ago and it's now considered done. Now, Reclaim allowed you to, has always allowed you to reschedule it. You could reschedule it right in the planner. So for example, I could say, you know what, I didn't do that morning catch up. I want that scheduled again later today. Or a little pro tip for you is you could say no to these habits. This is a new smart habits or habits 2.0 feature that let you click no, and that also reschedules it, saying I didn't actually do it at that time. Similarly, if you didn't do a task at this time, you could delete it from the calendar, or you could come in here in the planner and say reschedule as well, and that would reschedule it into the future. So that's the default way that Reclaim has always worked. But we've heard from our customers that people would like it if Reclaim kind of did that automatically, unless they affirmatively told Reclaim that they actually started the work as it was scheduled and planned on the calendar. So we're really happy to share with you that we now have this new feature right here. And I would encourage you all to look very closely. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so you can all see it a little better. These animations try to help explain what's happening. And so this is the default state, the state I just shared with you, where as time moves on, a habit gets the check mark, right? The task actually gets the little thumbs up. It's not necessarily marked as completed or done. This behavior down here is what some of you have probably used as a way to get tasks to reschedule. But often when people saw this option here, they'd say, well, can I not wait a day? Can it just happen right away? And so we've addressed that. And the way we've addressed that is by introducing this feature. And so I'm going to turn this on right now. Unfortunately, it's not an easy one to demo because it requires the passage of time, but I'll describe it to you. and then I can answer any questions that come up. But you can kind of see it here with the visuals. This helps us express the idea. What's happening here with this visual is it's showing that if there was a habit on the calendar, but you didn't say that I've started the habit, that habit, once the time has finished, we still keep it on the calendar because people don't always work exactly to the minute of the schedule, and we don't want things to move away from you if you were just a minute or two late to saying that you've started work on what was planned on the schedule. So if you have something like a morning catch up, the time will run through it, and once the time is finished, if you didn't tell us that you started on that task, and I'll show you a few ways you can, that task or habit, I'll show you a few ways you can tell us. Then we will say, okay, well, it needs to automatically get rescheduled. It's kind of the equivalent of right-clicking on that and saying reschedule. And you'll see this scheduling behavior where it kind of pops down to the next thing. Now, if you have another thing scheduled right back to back, we won't move that thing. That's what you're seeing here with this animation, but we will move the habit later to the day if it's still eligible for scheduling. In this animation, what we're also showing is clicking start on the task maybe a minute, 5 minutes after it was originally planned to be scheduled. And so you can see it kind of shifts outward. But then once you told us you started on it, then it will be assumed to be worked on based on the amount of time that's on the calendar or until you click stop. So this works for both tasks and also the new habit system. It does not work for our legacy classic habits. So if you're interested in this, you can turn it on now, but know that it'll only work for the new habits, and you'll need to upgrade into the new habits. So we think it's really nice. What it ends up doing is it kind of subtly encourages you to come back to the calendar and indicate that you are starting on something. So for example, I might say, I want to mow the lawn right now instead of waiting for this amount of time. So I can go ahead and click start, and now the mow the lawn will be on my calendar. And as time moves on, it will get counted as logged. Alternatively, this lunch habit, if I don't say I've started it, then as time moves on, it will get removed from the calendar and no assumption will be made. So I hope that's addressing for some class of users a workflow that they would rather prefer. The tension here and the trade-off is just whether you want your calendar to sort of express what the plan is, and then you come back retroactively, maybe at the end of the day, and make adjustments or to what did or didn't happen, versus if you want the calendar to more real time keep getting adjusted and push some of those things forward. If you do that and you're not right at on your computer or on your phone telling Reclaim that you've started stuff, then what you'll see is the calendar will get a little cleared out because some of these things will start getting removed. But you can always come back and log time to capture what did happen. So for example, maybe the lunch task kept getting pushed backwards and you're like, oh, sorry, not the lunch task, the mow the lawn task got pushed backwards, and you realize, oh, I actually did do that. You can still go ahead and log time for that retroactively. And so I could say, I actually did that yesterday, yesterday morning, and that log time will automatically get captured on the calendar and counted as if you started it back then. So we did just get a question: can you log a habit? You can start a habit, and you can drag a habit into the past. For example, I can say, I did my lunch here, and now it's in the past. But we can make this easier. The reality is we definitely should and can make it a little easier, where you can log something even if it's not currently on the calendar, and that can happen. For example, if this lunch habit gets kind of pushed and then finally becomes ineligible for scheduling, and then I want to retroactively log it, we want to make it so that you can go ahead and click the same log time capability that we have for tasks. So there are some ways to do it today by clicking start, or for example, I can click start and it'll put it on the calendar, and then I can put it in the past. But that really works for the day of. If it's now tomorrow and you're trying to retroactively log a lunch that you didn't capture, that's a little more difficult today, but we will improve that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll pause there, and Henry, maybe you can, or Elizabeth, somebody can be the tell me
Yeah.
what these questions mean here. I see a few that have come in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a couple questions from Zach a moment ago about just granularity of tasks, and I think there's two components to it. The first is just around smaller tasks, the ability to create like a 5-minute task, and then I think Zach followed up, and I think this aligns nicely with some of the stuff you and I have talked about in the past, which is like, actually, yeah, I could see these tasks being part of like the notes for a habit. So like maybe is there a way for me to take, checklists of smaller things I want to get done and plunk those into my afternoon catch up habit or something like that.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, Zach, first thing to note is we are considering dropping the scheduling, let's call it resolution, from 15 minutes to 5 minutes. And so that may address some of your question there around smaller micro tasks. One thing I will note is that if you ever mark a task as done, if you started a task and then say it's done, 1 minute later or 3 minutes later, we'll log a small amount of time so that it's kind of, there's breadcrumbs on the calendar. So if you haven't experienced that, try it out. It doesn't have to be a minimum of 15 minutes, but for scheduling forward, we do require those 15-minute resolutions today. And we do think it could be decreased slightly. That said, I think what you're getting at in your follow-up question is there are diminishing returns. A calendar can only be so precise, both from a visual density standpoint, right? There could, if you have 50 little slivers, it can literally be difficult to read it. But also, maybe even more importantly, it may just not be realistic, right? When you
Yeah.
sit down at your desk and you're going to tackle 20 small tasks, the exact order in which you tackle them is usually not that important, and it's probably very unlikely, no matter how smart our AI gets, that we'll get that order correct for you. And so we totally understand that there's a certain workflow for these smaller tasks that may not actually be appropriate to be individually scheduled, but rather should be bundled together and perhaps be part of a habit like do all my little chores, or do all of my little tasks, or catch up on 20 emails. And so we are absolutely thinking about ways where we can bring tasks and habits a little closer together. Um, we're still very much in the ideation phase, and we're eager to hear what you all think as well. So always, as many of you know, you can drop into the in product chat and share your thoughts, or join our Slack community and share your thoughts. But a couple things that we've noodled on. Henry alluded to one of them, which is sort of a special class of tasks that really represent themselves less as events on the calendar and more as checklists within a habit that are unique for that day's habit. And whatever you check off doesn't show up to tomorrow's habit. And the ones you don't check off kind of just automatically spill into the next list. And a very closely related idea we've considered is this idea of dynamic habits, where the habit duration can grow or shrink based on some external signal, like the size of your inbox, or the number of items in a to-do list or checklist, or grocery list. And so we think there's some interesting play between those two things that we would love to introduce down the road. So I hope that gives you some confidence we're moving in that direction. Okay, what are the next ones?
If a smart meeting occurs every Wednesday, how can I share the link with my clients that they have the link in their calendar for every Wednesday, or how can they delete it from their calendar? So I think there's maybe two components here. And I don't know if we're asking about smart meetings or scheduling links. I'm guessing, given that it is a recurring meeting, it's probably a smart meeting. Typically, smart meetings do not have links associated with them, just because they represent events on the calendar, and our assumption is, it's on the other person's calendar, and that's kind of how they're going to see it, and they're going to see it through notifications that they get about the event via Google. They'll also get notifications initially when the meeting's set up via Reclaim. In terms of how they can delete it from their calendar, what I think you might be getting at is is there a model for them to completely remove the event instead of either like declining it and having it reschedule? Which I think, Patrick, you could take a swing at.
I can speak to that. Yeah, the smart meetings platform is really meant to lean into the standard workflows that already exist with recurring events and calendar invites. And so if you make a smart meeting with a coworker or a client, it's going to work the same way in that it's going to initially feel like they received a recurring event invitation, and they'll have an invite from Google Calendar in their inbox for that recurring event. Now, if anybody doesn't want that recurring event on their calendar, they say, I'm just not that high tech. I'd rather use a pen and paper calendar. I don't want this thing on my digital calendar. They can decline or delete the entire series, just like you can with any other recurring event. And in particular, if they say decline or delete the event on their calendar for the whole series, Reclaim gets that signal and will capture that as a decline by the user, and it will stop scheduling the smart meeting. It'll be surfaced up in your smart meetings list as everybody declined, or all the required attendees declined. We actually put a little banner there, and that's to highlight that this is probably something you want to go and discuss with that other person because they may not want to do the thing that you set up. So it should be pretty natural to try it out. And if they do keep it, of course, then what will happen from there is that Reclaim will automatically find new times to schedule it outside of the normal natural recurrence whenever you're busy at that time or whenever they're busy at that time. I hope that clears that up. There was another question. I saw this one pop right in, just around apps on desktop or mobile. And I think that's very apropos to ask in kind of the context of especially things like checklists or trying to press start or indicate to Reclaim that you've started on a habit or task. We absolutely see the need to be more at your fingertips than we are today. I think, if you've been with us for a while, you know that our design philosophy has often been about meeting you where you already are in your calendar or in your to-do list app. But we also know that as time goes on, we're increasingly introducing concepts that are unique to Reclaim. Things like declaring your intent to start on some work. That's not really a concept that naturally fits into any of these other platforms. And so we see the need, and we anticipate building more desktop and native mobile app integrations so that you can ultimately say things like, hey, Siri, I'm going to start mowing the lawn. And it should go ahead and take care of that and interpret what that means. So, and then naturally, of course, your calendar will stay up to date and reflect your actions and intents.
Yeah, the other thing I think, if you head back to the planner, Patrick, as part of the auto reschedule work, we have not gotten it out there yet. For those of you that use like Raycast, our Raycast extension that have a Mac, you probably know there's a nice little menu bar integration that shows you like what's coming up next. It gives you little actions for it. We're planning to introduce a pretty similar component into our own UI where kind of no matter where you are in Reclaim, there's a little chip at the top that sort of tells you like, here's what's happening now, here's what's coming up next, and kind of gives you all the common actions up there, which we think will help, again, with the assumption you're in the web app, but I think it doesn't undermine what Patrick mentioned around kind of being in the moment, on the go, that sort of thing. The last thing I did want to point out, and I realized we forgot to mention it with all the hubbub here, but if you head over to your general settings, Patrick, we have a classic Steve Jobs one more thing.
One more thing.
Yeah. So for those of you that have used Calendar Sync or are users of Calendar Sync, you may be familiar with kind of how we treat visibility or sort of busy free settings on events that you have not RSVP'd to. Currently, the behavior prior to introducing this setting was that if you'd RSVP yes to something, we would mark it as busy. If you RSVP'd maybe, we'd mark it as busy. And if you RSVP'd no, we would remove the event. We wouldn't sync it at all. And for the most part, those settings kind of made sense to us, but we also knew that there were cases, particularly around no RSVP, where it's a little ambiguous and where some people are really avid RSVPers and they will really prefer that behavior. And then there's some folks who are like, I'm syncing, 12 calendars and I can't be taking the time to yes and maybe all my events. And so we now have this setting that will apply to your calendar syncs that will make it so that if you have a no RSVP event, you can now set it to busy instead of free. So for those of you using Calendar Sync, you may be totally happy with the current behavior, and that is the default you'll continue to have. But if you ever want to override it for your syncs, you can now do that. That just came out yesterday.
Yep. So yeah, if you're invited to a personal calendar like this, I'm not showing the whole calendar sync, but in this case, when someone invites you to something, you can now ensure that shows up as busy immediately on your personal calendar without having to click yes or maybe, just to visually show you what Henry was saying here. So yeah, we hope you enjoy that. Kevin, sorry, yeah, it's our demo persona. So yeah, this is a great new setting, and frankly, we're probably going to set this to this way for all new users. But we didn't want to disrupt your workflow, so we have not changed it for any existing users, but you may want to consider doing that.
Yep. Cool. Don't see any other questions, and I know we're running up on time, but Elizabeth, anything else you wanted to go over?
No, that's everything. You guys covered it. Great. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us this morning. Hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend ahead. Thank you, Patrick and Henry, for joining me as always. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.